Hello my people, welcome to another tutorial. In today's tutorial, I'm showing you how I recreated this Taylor Swift dress. You've seen it everywhere. I am quite late, but yeah, it's here finally. And this is my take on recreating it. So probably other people have done it differently, but yeah, I will just show you how I made mine so that you can be able to make yours in case you want to, to recreate it if you like this one. So for the materials, I used 4 colors and I used 2 skeins of each. Apart from the orange, I used 3 skeins. So this is Mica from Volido. It's 50 grams each skein and is 165 meters long. It is 51% acrylic and 49% cotton. It recommends 2 to 4 millimeter hook, but I'm going to be using a 3.0 millimeter hook. You can use any other yarn with its recommended hook size. I would prefer maybe a size 2 yarn, but this is a size 3 yarn, so just work with what you have. You also need a tape measure. This is important as we are going to be taking our measurements. And this is how we are going to work our dress. You will need your hips measurements. Mine is 33 inches. And then to your hips measurements, you're going to add 2. So if I get 33 plus 2, I get 35. So for our back panel, it's going to be this measurement you have here divided by 2. So my back panel is going to be 17.5 inches. So we'll start with the length of our dress, a very long chain. This is the length of your dress, right? So once you know how much you want, how long you want it to be, that is from the top of your shoulder all the way down, then we are going to work with the back panel from here on like this to work towards this way. So once I have 17.5 inches, right, which is my back panel, this number here, and then now we'll start on the front panels, and we are not cutting the yarn, so we are working all together. So I will have a row here, and once I get to here, then I will like split it, to leave the armhole here. Once I do that, then I will work a few rows and then do some decreases and then some increases and then work straight and then back like this. And then once we are done there, then we will leave the armhole here and join this part here to this side, and then we are done. And then we do the sleeves. All right, so let's start. So we are going to start with the foundation chain. This is going to be the length of your dress, and we are going to make a very long chain, and then we are going to measure once we have our first row. So I am going to make a very long chain because I hate to make measurements and then they are not right and then I have to repeat. So I'll be cutting off the excess chain. So make a very long chain. Mine, I want my dress to be 26 inches long. So I'll make a chain maybe 30 or 31 inches long. And then once we have our row 1, I can cut and have my 26 inches of row 1. Then I can cut off the yarn, the excess yarn. Okay, so this is my very long chain, right? And now we're going to begin on our first row of granny stitches. So you are going to yarn over and you're going to skip the first 6 stitches, and into the 7th stitch you are going to make your first cluster, which means you're going to make 1 double crochet like this, and then into the very same space that you worked in your first one, you're going to go in and make your second one, and into that very same chain you're going to make your 3rd double crochet. So that's our first cluster. Then you're going to chain 1 and you're going to skip 3 chains, and into the 4th chain you are going to make another cluster. So into the 4th chain you're going to make 3 double crochets in that one chain. And then you're going to chain 1, skip 3 chains, into the 4th chain make 3 double crochets. And this is going to be our pattern. So you chain 1, skip 3, and then into the 4th one, 3 double crochets until you have your measurements. So I am coming to, I have about 25.5, so now I want to make my last one. So I will skip 2 chains, and into the third one I'll make a double crochet. Okay, so this is how it looks. At the end, you skip 2 chains and make a double crochet in the third one, just 1 double crochet, and then I'll just go into like the third chain here, cut off my yarn, my excess chain, sorry, and just pull to close it like that. So I have my measurements. I don't have to bother going back and forth, you know, to get the right measurements. So this is the length of my dress. It is 26 inches long, sorry. So now we are going to row 2. So I want to change color, so I will go to this maroon color, and instead of finishing with the white, it's not white, it's like yellowish, instead of finishing that, I'll finish the row with the maroon and then chain 3 to start our next row. So I chain 3. Okay, I'll cut my other color and then tie this up so that it doesn't go loose. You can tie it twice. In the end, I tie them twice so that they are, you know. So since we ended with a double crochet, we are going to start with a cluster, and this chain 3 counts as a double crochet. So I am going to go into this chain space here, and I'm going to make 2 double crochets just to make it a cluster of 3, since the chain 3 counts as a stitch. So if you end with a double crochet, you start with a cluster. Okay, so then chain 1, and now I'm going to go into the next chain space and make a cluster. And then chain 1, go into the next chain space, make a cluster. That is 3 double crochets in that chain space. And I'm going to repeat this until I get to the end of this second row, and I will show you how to close it off. So starting the first row and second row is going to be different. It will be a repeat of 2. So I'm coming to the end, and I have this chain space here, this one, the big one. So you chain 1, and then I'm going to go into that space with 2 double crochets. And I need 3 double crochets to complete the cluster, but since we want to keep our lines straight, instead of putting it in the space, I'll go into the on top of the chain 3 and make a double crochet like that. So that is my last cluster. Now the next one, we've ended this row with a cluster. The other one, we ended the row with a double crochet. So on this row where we end with a cluster, then we will begin the next row, which is now the third row, with 4 chains. So I changed my color again because this whole dress is full of color changes here and there. So I chained 4. We have a cluster, you chain 4. Okay, remember that. So how we start row 2 and row 3 is different. Okay, how we start and how we end. So tie your yarn, and then you're going to turn your work, and since we chained 4, we are going to go into the next chain space here and make a cluster. Okay, and now you're going to chain 1 and make your second cluster. And chain 1 and make your next cluster. We are working the clusters in the chain spaces, so it's quite easy actually. So do this until you get to the end. I show you how to close this row off and start the next row, because you're going to be repeating row 2 and row 3. So I come to the end. All right, so I chain 1, and to close this off, we end with our double crochet. So I'll go on top of this chain 3 right here and make a double crochet. So now we're going to repeat row 2. So I need to change color, okay? So as you know, like how we started on row 2, when you end with a double crochet, what do you start with? A cluster. So you chain 2, you chain 3 and start with a cluster. Chain 3, okay? Don't forget, you end with a double crochet, you chain 3. And that chain 3 counts as a stitch. So I'm going to make 2 more double crochets in this chain space to complete the cluster. Okay, and now it's going to be chain 1. So these 2 are the same. So chain 1, make a cluster, chain 1, make a cluster, and in the next chain space, and it's going to be like this until you have the measurements that I told you. For me, it was my hips measurements plus 2 inches, and then that number divided by 2. So I will do this until I have 17.5 inches in width. All right, so I'll keep changing colors like you wish. All right, so yeah, we are going to keep repeating row 2 and row 3, row 2 and row 3, row 2 and row 3. All right. All right, so this is what I have. So for me, it was 17.5 inches. Of course, if you have bigger hips, it's going to be bigger. So just take a tape measure, wrap it around your hips, add 2 inches to that, divide by 2. That's what your back panel should be equal to. So now we are going to determine how much we leave for our armhole. So you're going to take that tape measure, wrap it around the biggest part of your arm, which is the biceps, and then add 4 to that. So 4 inches to that. So if I wrap around my arm, it's 10 inches for me. And if I add 4 to that, it will be 14 around my arm, right? So since it is 14 all around my arm, I need half of that measurement because, you know, if it is all around my arm, and for this part, I only need to leave like 7, and then, you know, because it is not, I don't know how to explain it, but I hope you understand. So measure around your arm plus 4 inches, divide by 2. So mine is 14, divided by 2 is 7. So I'm going to count how many clusters I have here, 7 inches, and then I'm going to leave that as my armhole. So put a stitch marker on that. So measure 7 inches. Mine is 7 inches. Yours could be 8, could be 9, depends on how big your arm is. So measure around your arm, add 4 inches to that, and then just divide by 2. All right. So once I have my stitch marker, I know how long I'm going to leave for my armhole, how many clusters. So I'm going to just make a very long chain because I'm going to be working all the way down. But if you're coming all the way up, you just continue, you know, making the chain. I don't know if that makes sense, but if you're coming from down going up, then you continue with already the whatever you leave for the inches, the clusters. But since I'm working from up down, then I have to make the chain and attach it to where my stitch marker is. But if you're working from down up, then you attach where your stitch marker is. When you get to where your stitch marker is, then you just make the chain. So it's a long chain like we did with the first one. Then I will do the number of clusters that I left on there and just cut off the rest. Okay, so this chain is like the side, this row is like the side chain. So I'm just going to reattach here, and it's going to be like a side row. So imagine you were working a new cluster. So this is what I'm doing. Okay, so I work my cluster here. Like this. So this row here in orange in the middle between the two panels is just going to stay like that. And when we are joining to the other panel, we'll also put a row like that. So don't count this row at all when you're counting your panels, your clusters, or your number of rows. Okay, this is like a shorter row. So you're just going to continue making your clusters and all the way down. Then you come back up and I'll show you how to work on top of that chain. So I went all the way down, and once I get down here, I'll just finish off my row like usual, and then chain 3 because I finished with a double crochet. And now I work my cluster here, and then chain 1, work my next cluster, and I will see you up where we have the chains, so that we can work that part. So I came all the way to where we have our chains, and I have a cluster. So it's just going to be a continuation like what we did when we were starting. So I'll just chain 1, and then I'll skip, of course, these are already 3. And then into the 4th one, I'm going to work a cluster. So I already know how many clusters I want to work because I've counted them there. So I'm just going to chain 1, work my next cluster, that is skipping 3 chains, and then into the 4th one, make a cluster. Chain 1, skip 3, and then into the next one, work a cluster. Chain 1, and just continue until I have the number of clusters that I left on this other side of the back panel. So 1, 2, 3, 4 until I have the number here. So I'm done with all my clusters. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so I ended with a cluster because on this top of, then I will just cut off the excess stitches. So I'm not ending with a double crochet because the double crochet is down the other side. So you just have to make sure you're working the right side. So on this side, we will end, as you can see, we're ending with the cluster side. So I will still end with a cluster. So what happens when you end with a cluster? You chain 4. Right, so now I'm going to chain 4 and turn my work, and now continue working like before. So now this is already set. So this is the first part of the front panel, but now we'll need to work some rows and then do the decrease, you know, the neckline, to cater for the neckline. So just continue working like this, and in the next segment I'm going to show you how many inches I had to leave for the neckline and how many you will need to leave for your neckline. All right. So for the neckline, I wanted to leave 8 inches for the neckline, right? So for me, these are 10 rows before I do the neckline. But how did I come to that? So I need to leave 8 inches for the neckline. That is for small, extra small, I don't know, large. So if you're extra large, XXL, you can leave 9 inches. So we are leaving 8 inches, right? So I am just going to measure how many rows those 8 inches are. Okay, so 8 inches, I just put it on my work, and then I measure how many rows are 8 inches. So let's count them. So it is this is going to be my neckline. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay, about 16. So about 16 rows are my 8 inches. So that's what I'm going to leave out. So I'm going to count every row on my back panel and then remove those 16 rows, because 16 rows are equal to my 8 inches that I want to leave. So measure your back panel and see how many inches are 8 inches. Then get all the rows, okay? Subtract those 16 rows. For me, it's 16 rows. And then whatever you have remaining, then you divide it into 2, because we have 2 parts. We have the first part, then the neckline, and then the second part, okay? So for me, it is 36 rows on my back panel. So if I subtract 16 from that, I have 36, I have 20 remaining. So that's why my first one is 10, and then I'll have 16 of the neckline, and then I'll have 10 on the other side, okay? So the first side and the last side should be equal, okay? So if you have, I don't know, 15 on your whatever. So anyway, moving on, we are going to leave 3 inches here, okay? So how many clusters are 3 inches? For me, it's about 3 clusters for 3 inches. So that's where we will start our neckline, with 3 inches, okay? So 3 inches is what I'm leaving here, and you can put a stitch marker, and that's now where we are going to start our neckline. All right, so put a stitch marker so that you can know where you start your neckline, because we'll put these 3 clusters back when we do the other side. So I already did my 10 rows, and now I need to do 16 rows of the neckline, okay? Because my 8 inches, I got 16 rows. So we are going to make some decreases, then we go straight and make some increases, and then put back those 3 clusters once we are done with the neckline. Okay, so I'm coming from down going up, so I will just stop where my stitch marker is. But if you're coming from up going down, then you cut off your yarn and then start from where your stitch marker is. Reattach your yarn where your stitch marker is. But since I'm coming from up, then I will just work on where my stitch marker is here. So our first row of the neckline, we don't make any increase, okay? So we are just going to finish it off, and as you can see on this side is where we were ending with our double crochets, but on this other side we are ending with clusters. So I'll just go ahead and end with a cluster, okay? But if we were ending with double crochets, of course you just end with 1 double crochet. So just look at your ends and see which side are you ending. Are you on the side ending with a double crochet, or are you on the side ending with a cluster? Okay, yeah. So then you chain 4 and turn your work, and we're going to make decreases. And here I realized I didn't chain a 1, so let's repeat this. Don't forget, always chain a 1 in between the clusters. So here's my chain 1, and then this. So this is my first row of the neckline, okay? So I didn't make any decreases. Now I'm going to chain 4 and I'm going to make my first decrease. I will make a total number of 3 decreases, okay? So 3 rows, 3 decreases. So now our first decrease is we are going to go in with a double crochet, normal double crochet, right? Now watch this. So for the next one, I'm going to go in, but then pull through 2 and then not complete this double crochet. I have 2 loops on my hook, and then I'm going to go into the next chain space, pull through 2 like this. Now I have 3 loops on my hook, and then I'm going to pull through all. I'm going to pull through all like this, and then I am going to make my 4th double crochet, a normal one. So that is a decrease that we've made there. Okay, so I've worked 2 clusters but in 1. So then chain 1 and continue working your clusters like before. So 3 of them, 3 double crochets, chain 1, 3 double crochets, and you're going to work all the way to the bottom and then come back up, and then we'll make our next increase. So all right, so go down and then back up, and then we make a decrease. I'll meet you here when we have a few clusters to go. So I went all the way up, and I mean down and then up, and now I need to make our second increase. So this is our third row, right? So now I'm going to make a decrease here. So I'm just going to go into this chain space here, make a double crochet, and then I'm going to go into that very same chain space, make an incomplete double crochet, and then I'll yarn over, go into the next chain space, which is our last one, make an incomplete double crochet, and then pull through all, and then make my fourth double crochet. So since these are the end of the row, you're going to put it on top of that chain 3. And that's a second decrease. Okay, so once you've made your 2 decreases, then you're going to, I want to change color, so I didn't need to complete that, so I'm going to change color. If you're not changing color, then complete that. So I'm going to chain 4. So since my last stitch was a cluster, so I chain 4, and we are going to make our last decrease. So just go in here with a double crochet, and then go in with an incomplete double crochet, and go into the next chain space with an incomplete double crochet, complete it, and then make a normal double crochet, your fourth one. So that is all. That is our last, only 3 stitches. Okay, 3 rows, 3 stitches of decrease, and now you're just going to continue doing the same. And once you come back, make rows with no decrease until you have 4 rows remaining. Like here we did 4 rows, 1 row of no decrease, 3 rows of decrease. So the other side will do when you have 4 rows remaining, because you do 3 rows of increase and then 1 row of no increase at the end. So do not make any increases here, just go straight like before. Do not make any decreases, and then once you have 4 stitches remain, 4 rows remaining from your, mine is 16. I need to leave 16 for my neckline, so I am going to work until I have 12, and then I'll come to make the increase. So this is what I have. I have 1 row of no decrease, 3 rows of decrease, and then these other rows that are no decrease at all. So now I need to make increase, and yeah, I made a counting mistake. I have 5 rows to go, but I realized this later, so it doesn't matter. So now we are going to make an increase. Okay, we are going to chain 4 because my last stitch was a cluster. Okay, so we will be making 2 clusters in 1. So like here I'm going to make the first cluster and then chain 1, and in that very same space make your second cluster. All right, like this. Chain 1, and I'm going to just work all the way down without making any more increases, and then come back all the way up, and we will make our second increase once we come back up. All right, so I went all the way down and then came back all the way up, and we'll be making an increase in the last cluster. So I'll just make 1 cluster in here in this chain space, and then chain 1, and then I will make 2 clusters in here. So I'll go in with the first cluster, chain 1, and then make 2 double crochets, and then the 3rd double crochet on top of the chain 3, just to complete the cluster like this. And then I'm going to chain 4, and because I counted poorly, instead of 12, I had 11 when I started my increase, so I'll go without increasing in this next one. Okay, so I'm just going to work my normal double crochet row, my normal cluster row without any increase, because I needed to have 16, but in my head I was thinking of 15. Okay, I needed 16 rows, so I'll just work a cluster in this chain space, and then chain 1 and work another cluster in the next chain space without increase. I'll go all the way down, and then I'll come all the way up and make an increase, my last increase, because we made 3 increases on the other side, decreases on the other side, so we need to make 3 increases on this side. So I'll see you once I go down and then back up here to make an increase. So I am going to make my last increase, which is the 3rd increase, these 2, and now the last one. So I'll go in with 3 double crochets, my first cluster, and then I'm going to chain 2 and then make my last cluster. So this is 2 double crochets, and then make my last double crochet on top of the chain 3. And that is all about the increases. But now we need to make our last row of no increase at all. You remember the first row that we made where our stitch marker was? We didn't make any increase there. So now we need to put that back. So this is going to be my 16th row. So I will make it with no increase at all. Okay, so it will just be a chain 4, turn my work, and I'm going to work clusters in every chain space all the way down. And when I come back up, I should add my 3 clusters that I left, you know, for now the other part of the shoulder part. So I need to add more chains up here so that I'm able to work that, but I'm going to show you. So let me go down, work my way down, and then I'll come show you how to add those chains. Okay, so I have my 16. So yeah, now we will need to make, I will need to make my 10 rows of no increase. Okay, so we need to add these clusters that we left off here. We need them to add them back, so we need a chain here, right? So we need to make, I went all the way down, but once I come back up, because I'll come back with the 17th row, I need to make that long because I only have 16 rows for my neckline. So since I need to make that long, I will have to add chains now. But if you were going, if you were up here with my 16th as this one, and I'm up here, I would just, you know, continue making a chain. But I'm down, so I need to add that chain before I come up. All right, so I'm just going to make a long chain and attach it here so that when I come all the way up, I can add my 3 clusters on that chain. All right, so since I want to change color into brown, I'll just use the brown color to make, not the brown, but the maroon, to make that chain. Okay, so I'm going to make a long chain because I need 3 clusters. It's 3 clusters. So I'm going to make a chain, reattach my yarn here, and leave that chain 1 there because it's like still working the pattern. Okay, so reattach my yarn here, and I'm going to make a long chain that will be able to accommodate 3 clusters. Okay, so just make a long chain. Like, you know, we always cut off the excess, so that shouldn't be a problem. In this way, we don't have to count how many stitches or whatever, how many chains, and do all that calculation. So we just make a long chain and then we'll cut off the excess. Okay, so I'm just going to cut this here. And now I'm going to work my way, my 17th row of the front panel all the way from down there going up. Not of the front panel, because I already have 10 on one side, 16 in the middle. Now this I'm going to make 10. Okay, so I'm going to reattach my yarn because I'm at the bottom down there, and since it is a double crochet, my last stitch, then I'll only chain 3 and make my cluster. And I'm going to continue making a cluster in every chain space until I get to where I have my chain, and I will show you how I work on that. I will see you once I get here. So I'm back to where I have my chain. So now I need to add how many clusters? 3 clusters, right? Same as what we left on this other side. So I will chain 1 and then I will skip 1, 2, 3. And then in the 4th one, I'll work my first cluster, the additional ones. And then I'll chain 1, skip 1, 2, 3. And in the 4th one, my second cluster. And like I said, on this part of the dress, I'm working clusters at the end, and down I'm working double crochet at the end. So I will go on and make a cluster. This is my last one. Okay, so I am done there. And then I will just cut off the excess. But since I'm changing color, so I will make that last one incomplete so that I'm able to change color, but cut off your excess yarn or excess chain. I was trying to show you something here, but it's not in frame. So, but I was simply showing you, counting, I think, my number of clusters that we had on the other side. So just cut off your excess yarn, and from here you're just going to work straight until you have the number of rows like you had on the first part. So my back panel was 36. On the first part I have 10, neckline I have 16, and now I will work 10 on this part, and then we will be done. And that last one that is like on the armhole is what we'll use to join to the other part, and we'll be joining using granny stitch. So yeah, so I will work until I have my 10 of them, and then I'll see you so that we can join once I'm done this part of the panel to the back panel. So this is what I have in the end. This is my front panel and back panel, and we're going to work a row that is similar as this one that we have here, the short one that I told you not to count. We are going to work that row as we join on this side, because it will also be a row of clusters, and it's just like on this side, so that we can leave some space there for the armhole, for the next armhole. Okay, so let's do that. So you're going to count all the clusters in this one row that we left there for the armhole, and those are the same number of clusters that you're going to do on this other side. Okay, so we are going to be joining using clusters. So where we left off, mine is at the bottom. If you're working from top to bottom, then you will need to do that, count all the clusters you left on for the armhole, and then reattach your yarn there and work all your way down. But once I was done with my 10 rows, then mine is at the bottom and I need to work my way up. So I will arrange my work like this. So this is the front panel, and now we're going to attach to the back panel using clusters. Okay, so like I would normally do, I would have to chain 4 to start my row. No, chain 3. I'm at the bottom here, so I left off with a double crochet. So I'll chain 3 and then I will attach to the other side. Okay, So to this side I will leave one on top of the chain 3, right? So I'm going to work on top of the chain 3. So I will have to, not on top of the chain 3, but in that first stitch there. Yeah. And then I am going to slip stitch to attach to the back panel. Just one slip stitch. Like this. And now I would normally work a cluster, so I'll go ahead and do that. So 2 double crochets because the chain 3 counts as a stitch. So now I am going to attach my cluster to the other side. So what I do is I will go onto the other side, the back panel, in this chain space here. Okay, so I worked my cluster there, so I go into the chain space. I'm going to attach with a slip stitch like this, and then chain 1, and then work my next cluster in the next chain space. Okay, so I'm going to go into this next chain space, work my cluster, that is 3 double crochets, and then attach that to the other side in that chain space on the other side like this. My yarn is like in the front, it looks better than, you know, and then chain 1. This is how it's looking like. Okay, so then chain 1, like we were working the pattern, like you chain 1 after 1 cluster, and then do 3 double crochets, attach that to the other side by just slip stitching in the next chain space like this with my yarn in the front, and then chain 1, and then work another cluster. Go into the other chain space, my yarn in the front, slip stitch, and then chain 1, and then my next cluster. And I'm just going to do this until I have the same number of clusters like I had on the other side where we left the first armhole, that row that we did. And once I'm done with that, that will be it. Then cut off the yarn. So I'll see you once I'm done with my clusters. So the stitches are like going in one round. So I am done with my clusters, and I left the clusters that I had left on for my 7 inches. So I'll just, you know, chain 1 here and cut off the yarn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 clusters is what I had left. So I did the same number of clusters that I did in the orange row on the other side. So once I'm done with that, I'll go on and do the sleeves. The sleeve, so you can decide which side you want to be the right or the wrong side. It's all pretty the same. So I will do the sleeves, and for the sleeves we are going to do measure from the top, from our underarm all the way to our wrist area, where, or beyond our wrist, where we want that to be. And then we will work the same pattern, you know, clusters everywhere. And once we are done, we are going to make, so in all these ends, and then attach at the top here. And once we are done with that, then we'll attach our sleeves. Okay, so for the sleeves, it's going to be, the foundation chain is the length of your sleeve from your underarm all the way to like your wrist area. Mine is about 18 inches long, so you can make it longer depending on how long your arm is. So we will work until we have, for me it's 7 inches, remember that armhole, so I'll work until I have my 14 inches. Okay, so once my sleeve is 14 inches, then we'll attach it to the rest. So 14 inches long, because when it is folded into 2, it is 7 inches. And then I'll work another sleeve so that I have 2 sleeves that are identical, and we are going to attach them using, so it's like we are going to attach them using the same method like we did with a part of the dress. So the last row should be attached like this. You know, we work the first part, attaching the last part to the first side. Okay, so I'm just going to show you again how we do that. So work your rows, and when you're almost, when I did like 13 and a half, and then do the last row like this. So here I end with a cluster, so that means I begin with chain 4 and turn my work. Then I'm just going to go into on top of this chain 3 here, attach my work like this, slip stitch. I'm leaving the yarn in the front, and then slip stitch, and then I'm chain 1. I chained 3, then attached, slip stitch, then chain 1, and then now I work my first cluster in that first chain space. So I go into this first chain space, work my cluster, and then go into the next chain space here and attach that cluster there. So that was the first one, and then worked my first cluster, and now I go into the next chain space. Okay, and then attach that with a slip stitch, my yarn in the front, slip stitch, then chain 1. Okay, now I'm going to do that for every cluster. So I'll go into the next chain space, work my cluster, attach that to the other side. So go to the other side and work a slip stitch, and then chain 1, and then work another cluster. And then go to the space on the other side, change space on the other side, slip stitch, chain 1, and work a cluster on the front. So I'm going to do that until I'm at the end. And then once you're done with that, then you'll work your next sleeve. And once you have both sleeves, then that's when we'll be able to attach them to the other side. But then you'll have to first sew in all the ends. So this is my other sleeve I already did. We are just going to sew in all the ends, and once we have everything clean, then we are going to attach this to the rest of the dress. But then we'll first work the shoulders of the dress, sew them together before we do that. I'll work all the way to the top and then cut off the yarn, and then we'll meet you once I'm ready. So I sewed in all the threads and already attached one side and attached one sleeve, but I'm going to show you how I did that on this other side because this is not done yet, but it's the same method. So that's you're going to need a darning needle for this. So but you can use slip stitches to do that, but I think the darning needle makes it look neater. So decide what side you want to be, the right or the wrong side, and I will cut a portion from my yarn and put it in my darning needle. And I'm going to be using, what do you call this stitch? I think it's called mattress stitch to join. In case I'm wrong, just let me know in the comment section, correct me. So I'll just be going from the inside to the outside. Okay, so I will reattach my yarn with my darning needle, leaving a tail here in this first stitch, and then I'll pull from the inside, leave a little bit here, and then I go to the other side in the same stitch, from the inside to the outside like this. And then I'm just going to repeat that a little bit so that it is more secure in that same stitch like this. Next stitch, and then from the inside to the outside. Then next from the inside to the outside, and then on the other side from the inside to the outside. And you can just always pull your yarn just to secure it. So from the inside to the outside, inside to the outside, like that. And I'm just going to do this until I get to the end. So, but remember to always pull your yarn so that, you know, it lies flat nicely. All right, so that's it. And once you're done with this side, then you'll do the other side too. And then we will come and put the sleeves. You're done. Now you're going to put the sleeve. So for the sleeve, we are going to put it inside like this. So this is my sleeve and this is where I joined, so I want that at the bottom. So you're just going to lay it between the front panels and the back panels like this. Nicely. And then we are going to sew it all around. All around like this. So get my darning needle, and from the center here of this row is where I will start. So it's going to be the same method, inside to outside, inside to outside. So inside to outside, and then on the other side, inside to outside. So you're just going in inside to outside like that, and you're just going to do this all around until you get back to where you started, and then you close it off and sew in the ends. And once you're done with this one sleeve, you repeat the same on the other sleeve, and yeah, that will be it. And then once you're done, we will do a single crochet row at the bottom and around the neckline. Okay, so once you get back here, sew in the ends, cut off your yarn, and then you can just pull it through, and then we'll do a single crochet row around the neckline just to make it look better. Here like this all around, and then at the bottom too. So for the neckline, you're going to take your yarn, the one that you want. For me, I will be using the pink, and you can start anywhere, but I think it's better to start on one of the shoulder sides. I will start on the other one so that I can show you different ways to make, because it's like different types of stitches all going here. So we are going to be using single crochet, so reattach your yarn and chain one. And for this part, I'm just going to be working, you know, one single crochet in the chain space, and then 3 single crochets on top of the 3 double crochets, so like 1 single crochet in every stitch basically. So this is more obvious because the stitches are right there, but when you get a little bit to where we started our decreases, then it's kind of different, I think around here. So once you get to this part, then I am just working with my eyes. You know, some I put, you know, 2 single crochets in one stitch, or some I put 3 single crochets in one stitch. So it depends on how it's looking. So basically we are just going to work single crochets all around the neckline, and once you're done with that, then you just end the row with a slip stitch on top of your first single crochet, and then chain one and cut off the yarn. This is just to make it look better because it's not like straight everything. We had increases and decreases and everything, so just make a single crochet where I think it deserves the single crochet. And once you're done, once you go all around, you will make a slip stitch in the first one, cut off your yarn, and then we're going to do the same for the bottom. So it's the same thing at the bottom, just reattach your yarn anywhere and start the same thing. So make single crochets. I think I'll be making about 2 in everything. So once you're done, it should look something like this. You can also do the bottom of the sleeves if you like with the single crochet, but I didn't do that. So yeah, that's it. I hope you like the dress. If you do, please let me in the comment section, and please share this video with your friends and in your groups. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye.